Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B, Donnelly, and I get to be your host and producer today, tomorrow, yesterday, or whenever it is you've decided to tune in on your preferred podcast platform. And that might be places like Spotify, Apple, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Music, or maybe even YouTube. Yes, we are back with your weekend fix of all things poetic. Somehow, we've managed to make it all the way to season 10, but it's a far cry from those shelter days of COVID, when we first connected on a Saturday afternoon after I pressed publish and wondered who was going to tune in and didn't even know how to attract a single writer to join me. Yet somehow, after I dragged my first guest, Gaynor Kane, onto the second episode, the emails began to come in. The listenership grew, and now as we start season 10, we've had over 900 guests take part in the podcast, joining us from over 16 different countries over the past 5 years. And along the way, I decided, thanks to your emails asking me when I was going to turn this into something publishable, to take this storm and turn it into that storm, or rather The Storms, the printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts. And I'm delighted to say that on November 1st of this year, at Farnham Castle at 2:30, we will be launching the 5th issue of The Storms, supported by Fingal Arts, Fingal County Council, Dublin UNESCO City of Literature and Dublin City Council. So a lot has happened since I first pulled everything out of the bottom of the closet and climbed inside with a microphone to record the first episode. Not something I ever thought I was going to do, having taken so long to climb out originally. But it is part of the reason that this season we're looking back, and I've invited as many guests from the first and second season to join me as possible, in celebration of the community we've built up, along with a whole coterie of new voices waiting in the wings to entertain your Sunday afternoons. Heads up, we air on Sundays this season. So that's enough from me. We have 4 guests to entertain you on the show today, so all that's required of you is to settle back down into your comfy armchair, a well-secured hammock, or maybe you've tucked your AirPods in and are about to take a walk along the beach. Wherever you are, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a snack to keep you company, and if you're not driving, perhaps a cheeky tipple to keep you merry. My name is Damien B. Donnelly. This is Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast, and I hope you enjoy the show. As I said in the introduction, this season I'm delighted to welcome back guests who have taken part in Eat the Storms in the first and second seasons. It's very much to look back, to celebrate and to nurture those early connections, and to acknowledge the continuing journey of writers who have made this podcast what it is. And so to start us off today, I'm delighted to welcome back a guest who at one point in time, we were both hoglets down on the Hedgehog Poetry Press farm, thanks to Mark Davidson. The Hedgehog Poetry Press has decided to close up next year after publishing so many of my favourite poetry collections. So this season we are cheering Mark off on his new adventure with former and past farmyard poets. This first guest will be familiar to many of you in connection with the Cheltenham Poetry Festival, but back in 2022, she joined us on the podcast to read from her debut poetry book, Landscape with Birds, published by the Hedgehog Poetry Press, and she followed that with a second poetry book, Transformations, in 2023. This guest is a retired teacher living in Dorset, and her 4th poetry chapbook, A Long Way Down, recently won the Brian Dempsey Memorial Prize and was published by Vol Books. And besides all of this, she is also the very proud Omi to Little Robin. What a wonderful way to start the new season of Eat the Storms with the bloomin' brilliant Beth Brooke.
Hi, here are 3 poems from my latest collection, A Long Way Down, and they're all poems about my father and his experiences in the war and in the army in the years that followed after the end of the war in 1945. The first poem is called Combat Drop. His back to the camera, my father waits at the open hatch, forever on the brink of free fall. Wings packed, harnessed by a maggot's silk, he trusts that when the moment comes, they will bring him safely to ground. He waits ready to launch the gauntlet of his body through the morning sky. It will be a long way down. Landing. The ground rises up. He brings his legs together, flexes his knees, braces for impact from air to ground. The balls of his feet are the first to land, then the sides of his calf, his outer thigh, a shoulder, until he rolls away the momentum of the fall. Almost no time to release the harness, step away from the silk and into the theatre of war. The prophet Ezekiel comes to Gaza. Ezekiel walks the wreckage of the road south. The buildings all around are shattered, splintered, a valley of dry bones that used to be a city. Death is everywhere. Ezekiel stands among the ruins in a pale blue helmet, high-vis jacket, with empty hands. Stands until the rust-coloured sunset turns to cold night. He finds it hard to bear the indifference of the stars, and despite the urging of the Lord, he has no appetite for prophecy, knows whatever he says, these bones will not live. Nothing he can conjure will make the dead along the Gaza Strip rise up again. He cannot ask the wind to enter these lungs and make them breathe. His hands are empty. His mouth, the mouths of his brothers, the mouths of his children, stopped up with ash. And the cold night fades with the morning star. Ezekiel stands, waiting for the Lord, and dew falls upon the bones of the innocent dead. On the subject of Gaza, a really great guy that I follow on Substack called John Adlam published an essay comparing Greta Thunberg to Antigone, because she is somebody that sees the superiority of a moral law over the law of a state or a nation. And I really like that idea of Greta Thunberg and Antigone. And this is called Greta Thunberg Sails for Gaza, a Theban play. We are the TikTok chorus, commentators on atrocities. We and pretend not to have seen the nightmare coming. We offer assessment of likely consequences, but think it best we do not get involved. Don't help to gather up the bodies. At least not all of them. Dress children's wounds. So many of them. Distribute bread. There are impossible numbers of mouths to feed. We will not build funeral pyres. Better to stay within the law which has forbidden this. And we leave these actions, which are at best performative, to the girl, Antigone, who places herself, her principles, beyond all city walls, refuses to confine herself to signing petitions or letters to the editor. Who does she think she is? We ask ourselves. Antigone stands at the prow of the boat. Those ritual offerings, walks clear-eyed at the head of the line of all those who question the things they are told, waits on the bloodied stage of battle, demands the body, demands the right of trees to grow, returns the glare of the status quo with a single word, no, as if somehow she knows better. This poem is called The Chorus of Silence. Do not ask me to admire the peach-wash canvas of the morning sky. We haven't the time. One day I will wake in the night and the trees on the hill will be blazing Roman candles of sparkling orange and red. The dawn will be grey, with a tang in the air of roasted meat so strong your mouth will salivate and the guilt will make you sick to your stomach. Afterwards, birdsong will be a chorus of silence, green a temerity. If you ask me to admire rainbows, I shall refuse. They are commonplace, floating on puddles, pinned up heart-shaped in front room windows, bleached by sunlight. Promises we had no intention of keeping. We have set ourselves upon the sea in sieves. You say not to worry. We can use the stars to navigate. My last poem is called What We Did on Our Holidays at Omi and Grandad's House. I am now a grandmother to Robin, who's aged about 20 months, and he came to stay recently. What we did on our holidays at Omi and Grandad's house. We sang. Old MacDonald is my favourite. I do the moo-moos, the honk-honks and bars. I join in with E-I-O. It's fun. At the playground, there was a little painted horse for me to ride. We sang, horsey, horsey, never stop. Our heels clip-clopped and our tails swished. I did yee-haw for a chorus. Sometimes we did dancing. Mama said my dancing was a bit like disco, a bit like trance. Omi said it was beautiful. Dada played his fiddle and Grandad joined in with a tiny guitar. Mama called it a ukulele. I can't say that yet, but I can say crocodile now. Crocodile, crocodile, crocodile. Snap, snap, snap. I can make my arms move like a crocodile's big mouth. I learnt to say cat and Minnie. Minnie is Grandad and Omi's cat. She is all black and has a twitchy tail. I tried to do gentle hands touching, but she ran away. When we went to the farm park, I did gentle hands to touch a goat. She didn't run away. It was fun. We went 2 times to the beach, and Mama, Omi and Dada swam. I did not swim. It was cold. And I said, cold. Next time, I will go in the water. It looked fun.
Next up, I'm delighted to say we have a new voice on the podcast, although it's a voice of a poet I've begun to admire a lot recently. His latest collection arrived this week to cheer up my man flu, called Why I Wear My Past to Work. It has been published by Parlier Press, and those of you who are familiar with the podcast will realise that that is the same press that published S. Preston Duncan's debut collection, Blood Alluvium, and Preston joined us on the podcast last season to read from that. This season, I hope each episode will hear not only from familiar voices, but also new voices who are celebrating their new collections. This writer was actually born in Dublin, is a journalist who currently works as an editor in Bristol, and next year he'll be following up his collection with a mini pamphlet published by the brilliant Atomic Bohemian, headed by the exceptional poet Bryony Collins, herself no stranger to the podcast. I'm delighted to say that this poet and I have shared the pages of Black Bough Poetry's Christmas and Winter anthology, and a shout out here to the maestro of the Black Bough, Matthew M.C. Smith. This guest's work has appeared in places like Magma, Prowl, The Wax Lemon, She Press from the glorious Anik Yerim, and was highly commended in 2024 for the Cove International Poetry Competition and shortlisted for the Canterbury Poet of the Year in 2023. Today, joining us on Eat the Storms for the first time, but hopefully not the last time, and reading from Why I Wear My Past to Work, a collection that explores fatherhood and the male perspective of family life, of which our dear friend Leslie Kerwin said, "Bittersweet lyricism and a wry humour pervade the entire collection. The poetry is never less than delicate, but its sheer emotional heft will catch you unawares." This is Chris Campbell.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to read a few poems from my new collection, Why I Wear My Past to Work. Ode to the pruning woman, eaten by vines. Google Maps fails, and I slam the brakes. Swerve to skirt your wild lawn, the curves of your glamorous dress. Worms squelch through sequins. You're too busy to hitch your limbs. Strips of spiked hair prick from under a wide-brimmed hat. Cheeks half buried in pruning. Gloved fingers sprouting earth. A mesh belt tucks in your remaining hours. Fruit clings to pots, and you rise to let watering can sleeves tip. Sun bakes your freshly painted villa. I wind my window down and in air-conditioned splutter tell you I'm late for my son's birth. Your brambling tongue feeds me directions, and I screech away. Decay fumes. In the mirror, I see you wilt, then turn again to water, ensuring the survival of roots. Buckets of lawn, luscious and full, as I hope your life has been, before you feed your veins to the soil, before your best attire spoils, threads unravelling like climbers, before your road ahead is swallowed by sun. Why I wear my past to work. My wife escapes our house for work. Even the shower sobs. All that is left of our honeymoon are photographs. I step over suitcases we bought in our youth. The shutter yawns above the broken radiator. I open it to reveal dog walkers, chores to do now. I mould my life around our broken taps. The showerhead drips after me to the bus stop, past the newsagents and post office. It leaks beside me at my desk. Only I notice the puddle. After leaving the ward, I ease into the park next door, clasped in sun, with a low white cell count. Who's that feeding crows his lunch? He hums to Radio 4, clutching his portable receiver with damp sleeves, clotted hair, I cross a bridge. Cars pass slow as clouds. A scene from the arches fades between drills. Construction workers beep for pedestrians to move. Dramatic interlude as they refuse. I think back to those cocooned on my ward, blinking as medical devices beep, their bedpans cleared by strangers. I wish to be a digger, to lift them, to be the wind blowing laughter into their card-cluttered corners, to be the crow's cause to remind them of sky, to be their top radio show so they know life's still worth tuning in for. No cufflinks at my company awards. My son packs floorboard cracks with my sleeve jewels. When we moved to this house, we feared he would crawl in dust. Deep cleaned every room to no avail. But he points out dirt to mop. He snatches my cufflinks again, parades them in his playroom, only hands them back for milk or a fairy tale. In the hotel, before an awards night, bow tie, a milk-tipped crayon, I check my pockets. No jewels to be found as my sleeves hang. Are they at the bottom of his mug? Lined up on the racetrack with his favourite trucks? When he spots their hexagonal outline, he will snicker, fling them in the air, as I ask a stranger to tie my cuffs with the string from an eye mask. Let me breathe apricots. When all is done in this fruit bowl of life, and there's nothing left to grind, let me breathe apricots into the winter sun, so I may wake, warmed in spring, to find hands rise again, surplus skin stripped, pruned honey, a dish full of dawn.
For many years, my next guest lived in England, wrote poetry inspired by the landscape and the history of the chalky downlands. But then he moved to Australia and had to readapt to a new and completely different landscape, one that took about 10 years in order to find his bearings. But since then, that new landscape has inspired his pen. He is a writer, historical researcher and a teacher of English and drama and a member of the Western Australian Poets. Has a fascination with medieval texts, folklore and mythology, and he is the author of the libretto Mima, a musical of war and friendship which was performed at the Regal Theatre in Perth and Cadogan Hall in London. He is the editor of 10 Poems About Butterflies, published by Candlestick Press, and in January 2026, Fremantle Press will publish On Good Up, a wetland summer diary. Today, for the first new episode of the new season of Eat the Storms, I'm delighted to welcome our second new voice, accompanied by local birdsong. This is Giles Watson.
Dawn Chorus. The way the tinsel of birdsong scatters across the glaze of dawn is like moonlight reflected in the harbour when the wind's been down and a breeze has only started. It fractures, swirls into fractals, hints and glints. The birds stand amid leaves on their legs' thin spindles, bills tilted skyward, syrinxes emitting mist, emitting sound, emitting breath, emitting stars, emitting light. Only there is also depth, moonlight flushing pearls through filtered layers of the harbour, down as deep as silts. Birds in the faraway spilling silver at dawn's cerulean edges, and with them echo and refraction, attending outward, birds and reflections together wending through air and water, mending souls, bending sound, bending breath, bending stars, bending light. And daylight comes above the birds, the way it does upon the water. The moon's tinkles fading under louder sounds of sunlight, the echoes dissipating, the spell half broken, the first blowfly, an early engine. In the distance, words spoken by some human, air and water emptied of glisten, a woken world, woken sounds, woken breath, woken stars, woken light. Grey shrike thrush at my window, striking notes that slide, bending like a wing beat, echoing a glade. Laugh, a variation, let your syrinx play, sleek in song and plumage, chorister in grey. Wattlebirds chime with you, symbiotic sound, beneath a hawk-high welkin, hidden by a frond. I could be your listener, abandon other trades, spend a lifetime heeding your raptures and your fades. Golden Whistler versus Chainsaw. A lone golden whistler tours the garden, plumbing his own miraculous resonance, delving deep into his wellspring. His voice drips and echoes as cold water plops down a deep hollow. Then the chainsaw kicks in, angry mechanized blowfly channering at tree flesh, and each time it stalls I hope it's over. All morning it continues. Someone's lapdog is chiming in with frantic yaps. A child screams at play. Fairy wrens needle in around the sound, stitching. And still the whistler circulates, ends up near my window, dueling with the chainsaw's doleful buzzing, flitting, wending, blending, quenching steel with water. The golden whistler sings alone. Listen, golden whistler, cicadas in the haze, peppermints a whisper, enchanting me to doze, awakening in winter, to chase the vanished call, and everywhere I wander, human faces cruel. I'm gone astray and wilder, stripped of hope and trust, left with only wonder at warmth so quickly lost. And go, a golden whistler, voiceless in the dark, where love is but a whisper, humanity a spark. Western rosellas. Rosellas hang their calls from trees, like baubles encompassing invisible bells. Their calls are Christmas-coloured, like their plumage, crimson, green, yellow, hints of cerulean blues. The rosella's calls are still dangling in my memory after sundown, when their heads are in the dark of underwing, snuggled down in their nesting box under eaves, their eggs close to spherical, tucked under that living quilt of crimson. The little ones, still bound by shell, grow grapple bills for climbing and learn from deep in albumen the meaning of the chiming. Bubuk owl. Bubuk, winding up your cogs of rotted wood to tock your pulse into a twilit ebb above the darkened track. Test your hollowed resonance, let loose an ancient knock. Release your knotted pendulum, the hunting hour has struck. Bubuk, with your mottled song, in glades the light forsook. Night-singing Australian magpie. A magpie, carolling at night, is dappled like the gloom. Her darkness is the underleaf, her paleness is the moon. She hides amid the mottled wood and melts the daytime down. She spills it through her open throat, melodious till dawn. So when I stare insomniac to where the branches bend, I cannot see her tilt her bill and cast her song beyond. For she is lurking shadow bird, a voice evading shape, embodiment of vacancy, elusive as my sleep. A full moon chorus. The night is encrusted with a tree frog chorus so brightly textured I can touch it. Its fabric seems to climb the pale boles of eucalyptus and launches out, cringling the atmosphere with silver leaf, cascading where the breeze catches it. The full moon has thrown them into desperate frenzies of self-enunciation and amplexus. So the swampier places are all a slither with wet skins, slops and spotted limbs, and intertwined with that wanton splotchy din of mating, the magpies are full-throated again, drinking in the cooling moonlight with moon-coloured bills, raised moonward in dark-eyed, mist-breathed devotion. Oh, but what I wasn't expecting was the crisp, mosquito-hungry jiddy-jiddies of the wagtails ricocheting among the peppermints, fizzing out of moonlight like static into shadows.
And my final guest on the show today is another familiar voice to Each the Storms, possibly the most familiar voice in the podcast other than mine, as she may be my most frequent guest. But she's not only been a fantastic participant over the past 9 seasons and supporter, she's also been a sensational stormer in our journal, The Storms, and 2 seasons ago she joined me for Behind the Storms, a fascinating behind the pen chat and what it takes to put our poetic lives together. Almost as famous as herself is her wife Kath, and the pair of them make an extraordinary team, a blend of knotted yarn and weaved words. She joined us first back in 2021, reading from her magnificent debut collection, Magnifying Glass, and has joined us on various special episodes since then, including our love episode for Valentine's Day, Halloween specials, various Christmas specials, and when we had that chat together on Behind the Storms, we were talking about her latest collection, Welcome to the Museum of a Life. Since then, she has created a coffee table book, Vortex Over Wave, which features a series of poems for the full moon, and a selection of photographs of discarded elastic bands. And every Monday she enthralls us with her own podcast, Singing as the Darkness Lifts, offering us the scent of the everyday. Those of you who know me well will know that one of my favourite pastimes is baking, and one of the reasons I smile these days when I bake is that I have two wooden spoons. One says Eat the Storms and the other one says Saucy Stirrer. All gifts for my next guest. The writer who loves the coast, peculiar things and the scent of ice cream freezers, joining us from the north of Wales where she lives with her wife Kath. This is Sue Finch.
Hello Damien, it's a pleasure to be back on Eat the Storms, so thank you for having me. And I've put together a little collection of 4 poems here, and the connection of them is that they've all been published by The Broken Spine. I hope you enjoy listening. The first one is called Watching the Joker Alone. As soon as the lights go up, I stretch nonchalantly from my seat, walk the centre of each step, feel my mouth begin to twitch, and there's a roll in my hips that wants to give me a swagger. I imagine my lips red, picture my head back laughing, everything that's in me out in a fountain of sound. Keep it all in, I tell myself. Just keep it in. The next poem is a poem about a clock we bought from a charity shop, and it's called The Clock Ticks Louder Now. For the last 3 months, the red clock we rehomed from the charity shop has been ticking more loudly. I used to only notice if I listened. Then I started to hear it when I bent down to turn on the TV. After that, I heard it each time I swapped shoes for slippers in the hallway. Now I can hear it when I lie in bed, through 2 shut doors. I dread lying down. The space between the tick and tock is just the same hyphened gap, but my pulse tells me there's something wrong. I have started watching YouTube videos on double speed, eating my toast when it is a shade lighter than caramel, and there's this voice in my head constantly chanting, "Hurry up, hurry up." This next poem is called Desert Antlers, and it was published in Wave 1 of Untamed Nature from the Whiskey Tree by The Broken Spine. Desert Antlers. Standing at the edge of the desert, I saw greyed antlers on the sand. All the way there I had imagined an orangey yellow expanse, painted it in my mind over and over again. Paler, faded, it stretched out, on and on and on, a shade of ochre. Doubled by their shadow, the antlers begged for the touch of my fingers. You said we would die if we tried to go across. Your hand on my shoulder halted my movement. I couldn't decide whether to ignore your touch or turn back to you. It was as if someone had paused time, and everything depended on my next steps. Crying, I reached out for the bones. And for my 4th and final poem in this little set, I've chosen one of my rabbit poems. I seem to have a lot of rabbit poems. Anyway, this one's called Unwanted Rabbits. I have fitted 42 of them into the bottom of magicians' hats, thrown in some dandelion leaves to keep them going while they wait to be pulled free. I took the 10 largest ones to the field behind the supermarket, where they can fend for themselves and do a bit of breeding. The ones that have been thumping out the loudest warnings, I'm going to take to the top of the cliffs to make burrows. I imagine them echoing out announcements for the Northern Lights, becoming famous for being able to predict the arrival of that electromagnetism. The pure white one, with a serene smile, is on a lead tied to the fence post, because its eyes are different colours, one red and one blue. I'm planning to make it part of a fortune-telling act. The tiny ones look like they would sell well, but I'm not sure how I feel about making for sale signs for bunnies. I imagine the tender ones, skinned on trays in a butcher's window, with a price per pound notice written in red ink. Perhaps I should never have asked how many unwanted rabbits there actually were, and yes, I admit it, I did ask. But please bear in mind I didn't ever mention I needed living proof. These rabbits have been turning up on my front doorstep for days now, and I'm almost out of ideas.
And so before I give you the final farewell, I'm going to leave you with 2 poems of my own. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, the Hedgehog Poetry Press has decided to close next year. It's due to Mark Davidson that I'm here because he was the one who published Eat the Storms, my debut pamphlet. He then also published my mini chapbook. He also published In the Jitterfritz of Neon, a collaboration between myself and Eileen Dupuer, and then he followed that by publishing my debut full collection, Enough, which was about my time living in Paris. So I'm going to read one poem, the opening poem from Enough, and I'm going to read the final poem from Eat the Storms, with again a huge thank you to Mark Davidson. Groove will always be in my heart because of being a hoglet on your farm. This is 98 Rue Vieux de Temple, or 98 Street of the Old Temple. On Monday, a muse-filled Monday, a sky blue clarity carries on like the water in a single river, from sea back to source. The pace is steady, still stepping up on that spiral, but memory is mischievous and twists past a door long since shut. On a turret staircase now strained with ideals where youth once lived. And I wonder if all the sunflowers I painted on its walls of other people's smoke stains are still visible under all the time that's grown over it. Considerations. Here today after Van Gogh, after all the running from the reverb of those shots and the call of those crows that tried too hard to claw at the dream we sketched once, beyond those walls. And the final poem from my debut chapbook, Eat the Storms, I'm reading today because it, I hope, captures a little hope. This is called Colour is Waiting. And still we'll come to lick the honey from purple petals. And still we'll come to root out weeds of worthlessness in gardens where others devour all that is beautiful. Time turns, and we in turn follow its path. Suns set and the moon shows us its song. Hold hands and then release. Hold hope and then move on. We only own the moment. Mothers, may still hand over their hearts to other mothers waiting to be wanted. Fathers may rise to be fearless or choke on the root of their own fear. But remember, black is only shadow. Still we come to that lake where language lingers, where we sink beneath its depths to slip from reflections we once wore and have long since outgrown. So come, catch the colour, catch the kisses, catch the life racing by in taxis, on trains, under starry nights waiting for us to paint them. Behold how much there is to love, to learn from, to let go of. Eat the storms, she said. Eat the storms. Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and nonconformers, genders all and genders equal. We've reached the end of the very first episode of Season 10, Eat the Storms, the Poetry Podcast. On behalf of myself, Damien B. Donnelly, thank you so much for joining us today, tomorrow or yesterday and listening to the remarkable talents of Sue Finch, Giles, Watson, Chris Campbell and Beth Brooke. For details, as always, on all of my guests, you can head on over to eatthestorms.com, click on the Listen to the Podcast section, and there you'll find a blog post for every episode. This was Season 10, Episode 1, and in that post you'll find headshots, bios, website addresses and social media handles, so you can find, follow and be fantastic fans to all of my guests on the show today. Now, other than the show, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, The Storms are a journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, which is supported by Fingal Arts, Fingal County Council, Dublin UNESCO City of Literature and Dublin City Council is about to publish its 5th issue. We have 89 contributors from all around the world, and this time I was joined by the utterly, completely sensational, the light that is Rona Green, who as my sub-editor. The journal is currently off at the printers and we'll be celebrating with an in-person launch at Rafarnham Castle on November the 1st from 2:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. Tickets are currently available on Eventbrite, though they are almost booked out. We will follow that with a Zoom launch to connect our international contributors. And then, of course, we'll have our own special episode of the podcast when Eat the Storms becomes the audio companion to the Storms Journal. So all this and more coming your way. So please, feel free to keep connected, either by heading over to the website eatthestorms.com, on X, which is Eat the Storms, on Instagram, which is Eat the Storms, and on Blue Sky, which is, coincidentally, also Eat the Storms. And of course, if you loved any of the poetry that you've heard on this podcast today, please go ahead and buy their latest collections, their past collections, or make room on your bookshelves for upcoming collections. There is so much extraordinary poetry out there waiting for our hearts and bookshelves to give them a home. And of course, Christmas is coming. But I do feel that a poetry collection is the perfect stocking filler. Ho, ho, ho. Now, I look forward to you all tuning in again next time on your preferred podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Music, or even YouTube. Oh, got it in on one breath. My name has been Damien B. Donnelly. This has been Eat the Storms, the Poetry Podcast. You have been sensational, and until next time, one more deep breath. Stay bloody poetic.